in this idea in AA that we call being of service, and in Jesuit they called being a man for others, is in my meditations and in my prayer life and in my AA work and in my family life and my friendships and the businesses that I operate. I've really discovered and want to strengthen and participate more in being a man for others.
Well, hello, friends of Bill W. and other friends. You have landed on Sober Speak. My name is John M. I am an alcoholic, and we are glad you're all here, especially newcomers. Newcomers, that is, both to recovery as a whole and newcomers to this podcast. Sober Speak is a podcast about recovery centered around the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. My job here on Sober Speak is simple. My job is to provide a platform to the amazing stories of recovery all around us. Consider Sober Speak, if you will, your meeting between meetings. Please remember, we do not speak for AA or any 12-step community. We represent only ourselves. We are here to share our experience, strength, and hope with those who wish to come along for the ride. Take what you want and leave the rest at the curb for the trash man to pick up. Ooh la la. And greetings from Studio AA, deep in the heart of Texas. That was the voice of our frequent guest, Mr. David G., that you heard at the beginning of this episode number 382 of Sober Speak, that is. And you are going to hear so much more from David in just a moment, but first things first, this here episode is brought to you by, it's made possible by David, not the same David G., but nonetheless, David, Kate, and Michelle. And so you ask yourself, you ponder, you say, what exactly did David, Kate, and Michelle do? Well, they went to our humble little website, www.soberspeak.com. They clicked on the little yellow donation tab and they made a contribution. So thank you so much, David, Kate, and Michelle. This here episode is coming right out to you'ns. I've said this before, but I know that you have so many things that you could be doing with your time, because I know that because I get pulled in so many different directions during my day. There are so many voices. There are so many things to listen to participate in. And I am just, I'm honored that you all come in here and listen to my silly little podcast. And remember, we're not here to, I guess, rile you up, if you will. We're here to smooth off, polish off some of the rough edges of your day. If you were feeling off the beam, if you're feeling restless, irritable, and discontented, we are here to help you get back in a state of mind where you can just breathe deep. And you can think about the things that are important in this world, spiritual things and family and relationships, and you can help to further yourself and grow. That's what we're here to do, and I'm glad you once again have joined us. So before I started recording here today, I'm always thinking somebody's going to come by and see me either from, well, I mean, you could see into my house, but it'd be kind of tough, but, or the lovely Mrs. M just kind of walking by, because what I do to prep for these things is I hold my hands or my arms way up in the air and ask for the spirit to come in here and be with me. And today I actually lit a candle. This is a candle that the lovely Mrs. M got me for for Christmas, actually. And it is I guess it's a manly candle. It says leather and musk noir, Noir. I don't even know what that means. It's a gentleman's collection. Now, I'm not a gentleman, but I did light the candle. I'm not even sure if any of this stuff works to to help me put out a better product for you guys, but I do have the intention of doing that. It's what I want to do. I just don't know if it helps or not. Like I saw Jimmy Kimmel on his not Jimmy Kimmel, Jimmy Fallon on one of his shows the other night. It was probably a couple, 3 weeks ago. Anyway, somebody was talking to him and they asked him if they said, or he indicated that he uses what do you call those breathe right strips on his nose when he goes to bed at night. And he also puts that, that masking tape they have nowadays that goes over your mouth that's supposed to help you breathe, or help you sleep better and breathe better and all that kind of good stuff. And the girl he was interviewing, Matt, she says, well, does it help? He goes, I don't know. And so I do all this stuff. I do the praying. I do the lighting of the candle. Sometimes I get out the essential oil and all that kind of good stuff. And does it help? Bah, heck, I don't know. But nonetheless, let's get on to the main attraction here. In fact, I was looking at, I don't know if I ever read this, but I got a comment on, let me see if I can get this here. Yeah, I got a comment on one of our social media things, one of our platform hosting things. And the lady said, I'm going real quick here. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. She said, oh, and I don't know, like the handle or whatever she uses on Podbean. I think it says Jeremiah NM. But anyway, she says, get on with it, bro! Exclamation point. Shh, John, we're not slow. Crikey. So I was like, I can't remember if I've read that lately or not, but if she's listening again, I'm sure she's thinking, get on with it, bro, again. Shh, John, we're not slow. But anyway, okay, now on to Mr. David G. David is from Frisco, Texas, and we are calling this episode, Being a Man for Others. Now, those of you who have been listening for a while are going to know that we have had David on many times in the past. I always enjoy spending time with David G. when we get together. It's just basically like two good friends sitting down to have a conversation about subjects that are important to both of us, and I really appreciate it. He was actually to come out. Now, I wish I'd had my candle at that point, or maybe I had my candle, but I just didn't like it, because I think that David would have enjoyed the leather and musk noir that I have lit in the office here today. But nonetheless, we discussed several topics, including relapse, prejudice, step one, alcoholic insanity, having a doorknob as a higher power, and where that frame actually came from, I never knew. The sick man's prayer, and much more. And by the way, we also talk about the step study that David sponsors once a year. By the way, if you're in the North Texas area and you believe you may be able to attend that, let me know. Just email me, John, JOHN, @soberspeak.com, and I can pass that information on to David. David co-facilitates the step study, and if it's within driving distance for you and you can make it, I'm sure David would love for you to join him and the rest of the folks there. All right, everybody. Now on to Mr. David. And remember, we will have plenty listener feedback at the end of this episode. Enjoy. Okay, everybody. So today we have the one and only Mr. David G sitting back with us again at the Sober Speak mic. And it's been quite a while, over a year. So Mr. David G, I'm going to have you go ahead, introduce yourself, give your sobriety date if you wish, and tell people where you live in this great land of ours, please.
All right. I'm David. I'm an alcoholic, addict, many other things. I've been sober since September 15th of 1993, and I'm from the Frisco area. John moved into my neighborhood, and I moved out of it, and that was not related, but it happened. So anyway, we're still about 5 minutes apart.
That's right. Yeah, and I hadn't even talked about it on the podcast. One of the things I had sent out like an email recently here about some of the ups and downs that I'd been through in my life. They're no different than what everybody else goes through, but one of the things that I did mention that I'd moved a couple times during that particular time frame when I was 34 years sober, and it was just moving
is a lot.
Yeah, it's not for the faint of heart, as you know.
So what you need to do is have an AA party, because then about 3 or 4 days before the party, you'll realize that you really haven't unpacked yet.
That's right.
That's how we learn.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. So you live close to the Frisco, real close to the Frisco.
I can leave now, right? at 11:58 and still make the Serenity Prayer. Seriously.
That's great.
Yeah, it is good.
So David and I were just talking a little bit here before we started. We never really have anything kind of set in stone that we're going to talk about. We do a little prayer beforehand, which you and I just did. And I just want to tell people this. I was saying the prayer, and I was praying for you, and I was thinking about how long we've known each other and how we've been there with each other through so many ups and downs, and
little kids to grown-ups.
Yes. Yeah. You knew my little kids when they were little kids. Yep. And and now they're in college, and I've known yours since they were really young, and now they're, some are living adult.
I'm a grandfather.
Yes, you're a grandfather.
3 times.
Oh no.
Yeah. Libby just had another. Yeah, about 5 months ago.
Little Emmett. They live here near me.
They live like 2 blocks over.
Yeah,
I'll be over there tomorrow morning making breakfast.
Oh, that's great. So when you make breakfast, what do you make?
I bring donuts and we scramble eggs. It's real complicated.
Well, but you're scrambling
cheesy eggs if I get my way.
And do the kids like it?
Sure, they like the donuts.
All right. So for those of you who may not be familiar with David G., he has been on this podcast, I would say, 7, 8, 9 times, something like that. You can go through and you can listen to all his other episodes that are available here on the podcast. He's done fantastic. I always get feedback about David. I know he's impacted a lot of people, not only in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I just want to say this, my friend, listen, I'm active in the program around this area, and I watch what you do. I've seen what you do. How you keep up with it all. I know you have a family. I know you have 2 or 3 businesses, and I know you sponsor just like a ton of guys, and it is amazing. You have more energy than
doesn't always feel that way.
Well, I don't know how you do it and how you pull it off, but I just want to say that publicly. I watch it. I'm in awe of it, and I think you do a fantastic job of giving back. So,
well, sometimes I feel overwhelmed, but most of the time I feel really grateful.
Yeah.
So you just got to take both.
Right.
I said I wanted a full life. I really just wanted the top half of full, the happy, happy, joy, joy. I didn't realize that having a full life means you get a little bit of everything.
And you have, man.
Yeah, for
you
sure.
have gotten it.
You too.
All right. So, one of the things I wanted to talk with you about here today, just to kind of start us off, all right, is because when this is being released, it's going to be sometime over the beginning of the year of 2025. I don't know exactly when yet, but step 1 is going to be on a lot of people's mind. And when I say step 1, let me rephrase that. There's going to be a lot of people listening to this who are in the discovery phase, trying to figure out, am I alcoholic? Should I be going to AA? Do I just have an alcohol problem? What, I mean, am I overreacting? You hear that word all the time. So, I'm not asking for advice, obviously, but I'm just asking for your experience, how you kind of came to step one, how you came to a realization in your life to fully accept that.
So, alcoholic insanity is just that. And I remember it. I still remember being kind of in a cage of alcoholism in my own making. Um, you and I talked a little bit about some friends of mine who have been in relapse lately and who have been regular members of AA, but have been in relapse, and how the alcoholism constructs this prison. There's a people make fun of this, but they shouldn't, talking about your higher power as a doorknob, because what that really meant in the beginning and still means now for people who know this is that jail cells don't have doorknobs. And so alcoholism created a cage that I participated in making. One of my good friends in the program always called it having your thank yous mixed up with your fuck yous, and really alienating and vilifying the people who are really there to help you. That in my mind, I believed that they were really out to get me, that they hated me, that they were disgusted with me. And the people who really had no concern whatsoever for my well-being. In fact, there were probably plenty of people who looked at me falling and suffering as something that they got to enjoy because of what a pain in the ass I was in their life for so long. They figured I was getting what I deserved, right? And there's a whole host of different types of reactions to active alcoholism. But what I've been in the midst of lately is close friends who I've been deeply involved in their recovery on and off for years, but in their addiction, shunning me and actively seeking that I not be a participant in their life. And as I've thought about it, what I've really recognized is this is how the disease of alcoholism works. When I don't want to be around the people who truly love me because I feel judged, the problem is that I'm behaving in a way that I'm so ashamed of that I can't stand to be in the presence of that love. And that to me is the isolation of alcoholism. And opening my eyes to that, I don't know that there is a prescription for what that looks like. For most people, like the book says, pain is the touchstone of spiritual growth. And for myself, I had to suffer long enough that I was willing to put aside my angst toward the people who wanted to help me and just accept their help. And I don't mean accept their financial help. I was always willing to do that, right? I mean accept their guidance and how I can get to another place, be it going to treatment, be it going to some meetings, be it going and reconnecting with my sponsor, going to therapy or outpatient or any of the many tools that we have at our disposal that when I'm drinking just seem like going overboard, Like I remember sitting with a friend who had just come back from a horrible relapse, just horrible, when, so many yets happened in about a 2-month period. Divorce, loss of job, DWI, all of the popcorn and Jim Jims that we get in alcoholism, right? Only it's not a movie, it's our life. And he looked at me and he really sincerely and with agony in his voice said, "How can this work for me? I was doing everything I was supposed to do." And being his sponsor and knowing what everything you're supposed to do looks like, because that's what I've been doing and why I'm sober, I just kind of went over him. I said, "So were you still going to, meetings roughly daily, but, all you could?" "Well, I'd been working a lot more, so I really couldn't go to as many meetings." "Okay. Were you praying and meditating in the morning before you got off to work?" "Well, no, not really." And on, right? And so I looked at him, I said, "When you say you were doing everything,
Right.
what exactly were you referring to?" And what I realized in that moment is the lie that I believe, that if I say it, somehow it's true. If you believe what I'm saying, it's true. But the truth is, people who stay sober, they stay sober doing very, very similar things to other people who stay sober. And people who relapse, relapse doing very similar things to people who relapse.
I just want to make sure, because I was writing when you said that, but about the doorknob, are you saying that that came from?
Yes, that was the original idea behind the doorknob.
Is that people that jails don't have doorknobs?
Right. When you're in a jail, I can tell you because I've been there, there ain't a doorknob. And your higher power is your opportunity to get out of the cage.
Gotcha. I had never known that.
Yeah.
I learned something today.
Yeah, I try whenever someone makes that comment in a meeting, not in any way to be know-it-allsy, just say, hey, listen, this is where this came from. And they're always like, oh, that's what they meant. Now, I'm not sure the significance of a Coke machine or whatever, but I do know that that is where the idea came from in terms of a doorknob.
You also, okay, and I want to go back to this. You said earlier, having your thank yous mixed up with your fuck yous. And you also talk about a coffee cup that you have.
Yes.
So I want you to, can you maybe dive into that a little bit further, both of those?
So I had there's a little history to this. So my grandfather he called himself an atheist. He was probably more agnostic, and he was a person who was just of service to people. He was very successful in life. I don't mean he made tons of money, although he made a very good living. I don't mean that he drove fancy cars, because he didn't. I mean, my grandmother and him went to Luby's 3 times a week. And that, if you don't know what Luby's is, it's a cafeteria, and they just lived a very simple life, but it was a really full life. And he was probably, I had a very nice and good relationship with my father before he passed, but as a young child really looked to my grandfather as how to behave, right? And so there was a lot of teaching moments, because I was a pain in the ass, right? And he would need to let me know that I was being a pain in the ass without hurting my feelings. And so the way he would do that is he would say things like, David, the true sign of an intelligent man are the words he chooses not to say. Mm-hmm. Right? And then another one he would say is, you rarely have to apologize for things that you don't say. Mm-hmm. And so in AA, my sponsor would say, you need a cup of shut the fuck up. Now, that's a little different than what, the delivery is different, but it's really the same concept. In chapter 10 of the 12 and 12, and you think in chapter 10, you've just had the spiritual awakening as a result of, before you're halfway through, and Bill stood on the mountaintop with the wind blowing through and through. You would think in step 10, they would start talking about this magnificent spiritual life that you were about to live, that your aura had suddenly turned gold, right? Mm-hmm. It is not what they say in step 10. They say things like, restraint of pen and tongue. You need to learn how to control yourself. You need to learn how to be quiet. Stop telling everyone what you think all the time. It's not appropriate or helpful. And so that's what I really think about a lot. I used to actually shush myself. I would be and this is a little weird, but I'm a salesman, and I would be in meetings with stores who were absolutely not moving in the direction that I needed them to move in for me to have a successful day, right? And and they'd be talking all kinds of crazy stuff and really just making excuses. And of course, me, the alcoholic who sold my alcoholism to people for years before I even had a job. So I'm very good at countering and thinking about what you say and coming back around the other side so that you come to my point and believe what I'm saying. Right. All the bullshit. Right. And I would be in these appointments and I would just start going, so that I would not try to control other people. If you feel like the best move for you today is not to buy my product or sleep with me or whatever, I need to let you do that. And I wasn't able to do that before. I thought that if it was important to me, that you would come around to understanding that it was important to you too. It talks about that. Oh my God. When it talks about that in chapter 5 and right after how it works, we read it all the time, 62 and 63. But when it talks about and wasn't it plain to the rest of the players that these are the things that he wanted? And did they not in turn retaliate, getting all they could from the show? That's not the exact wording, but it's pretty close, right? Yeah. And when I thought about that, how when all those years that I was countering what you thought, and if I made a mistake in what I said, I was able to wind back around to correct it before you picked up on it, right? I was able to create a point that you couldn't argue with. And then what I started to realize was that's how people viewed me. Is a guy who wouldn't let them think, a guy who wouldn't let them talk, because I had to. I wasn't a liar, John. What I was a person who liked to do things that were so wrong that you couldn't tell the truth about them.
Mm-hmm.
Seriously.
Yeah.
And so I felt like I was doing people a favor by lying because they wouldn't want to know the truth because then they wouldn't want to have a relationship with me. And after all, isn't that the greatest thing that ever happened to them? I mean, it's just nuts. And that doesn't sound like alcoholism, but it's alcoholism. It's what they write about in those pages when it's so weird when you're reading with a newcomer and they're talking about he's the actor. He wants to control the whole show, arrange the lights, the ballet, the other players. And you read that and you're talking to a person who just came out of a crack house and detox and treatment in the Salvation Army. And you're talking about players and ballet and managing. But it really is the basis for alcoholism, selfishness, self-centeredness, wanting to have my way, And so when I think about that big cup, and I actually have a giant coffee mug that I found at a store one day, and it's a giant coffee mug that says a big cup of shut the fuck up. When I think about that, I think about, David, it doesn't matter if you're right now. Just don't make the other person feel wrong. Mm. And it may be part of the reason that these guys don't want to talk to me. Because the people that really care about them are making them feel wrong. And I can tell you that I have done that. I have made people feel wrong, but I've really tried over the years of sobriety and thought about, hey, I don't want to make someone feel ashamed of something they're already ashamed about. I'm here to show that I have done those same things and that I am available to you if you're ready to stop doing them. And I think to a degree, all of us fail a little bit at that because it's hard. Intellectually, I know that those friends of mine, that they're just in their alcoholism, they're in that cage with no doorknob. I know that, but it hurts my feelings. I take score. And I remember that when they were homeless, I gave them a home, and now they're homeless again. And they think of me as the enemy when all I would do was offer them a home again, So it's a conflict for sure.
So, and I'm thinking about the term, navigating difficult relationships. And you're talking about some other people right now in specific, but there's a lot of people listening to this and, they're dealing with difficult people in their family or difficult people at their job. They may be the difficult person within their family or the difficult person at their job and handling that adversity. And I just want to kind of lay that up for you when you think about handling and navigating emotionally barbed situations and getting into situations where people do not see eye to eye and they have a different view of something. How do you go about that?
When I was young in sobriety, I had caused a lot of terrific harm to people. Like my sister, my only sister, who I'm extremely close to, and she didn't come to my wedding that happened 2 weeks before my sobriety date. And the reason she didn't come is because it seemed ridiculous to her that David, the crackhead who had just been smoking crack like a month before, was going to have a wedding, And so she didn't even fly down to go to the wedding. And so those types of difficulties, I can tell you today that my sister and I can talk about anything and we're like eye to eye. I don't see her enough because she lives in frickin' Milwaukee. But there's never a time that I can't pick up the phone and call my sister and we can't talk for however long we need to talk, right? So getting from point A to point B is really what you're talking about. How do I go from being the guy that if you loved, you are going to suffer from that love? Like the more you loved me and the more codependent you were and the more you needed Al-Anon, the worse it was going to be for you, right? And then you look at the people who were emotionally healthy that got away from me because they were setting boundaries, because they were healthy, like self-actualized people who didn't want to be in harm's way. And those were the people I really couldn't stand. I thought of the people who were codependent, and I really love enablers. Like, I'm all about a good enabler. Who doesn't want a good enabler, right?
We have good enablers listening to this.
Right. Hey, enablers, we love you. You're the best. And, enablers get a bad rap, but, when you're desperate for something to eat, sometimes an enabler feeds you, and that's the right thing to do sometimes. But, when I think about that friend who said you have your thank yous mixed up with your fuck yous, it wasn't just that I was actively turning my back on people. It was that I was unable to be honest with myself about what was happening. And I think really the reason I wasn't able to be honest with myself about what was happening is because I didn't want to stop. And that just does not apply to alcoholism. It applies to other behaviors in my life that are harmful to me and possibly the people around me. There's a joke in AA. I think it's a joke in AA. It's a joke in my mind. So whatever, is that there's many deck chairs on the Titanic to go down with, that alcohol is certainly the most pronounced symptom that I had. Well, alcohol and drugs was the most pronounced symptom that I had. But once you're sober for a while, I realized that, the alcohol was just one of many symptoms. In fact, some of the worst symptoms that I had of selfishness and self-centeredness preceded me ever taking a drink. And I found myself in medium sobriety in 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, when you're certainly no longer a newcomer, but you're certainly not an old timer. I found myself wanting to do stuff, running up my credit cards to the point of bankruptcy, needing attention from people who I had no business seeking attention from just for the sake of the attention, always needing an attaboy at work, never being able to feel good about what I was doing in my professional life if everyone wasn't, throwing up confetti every time I walked in the room, which, by the way, they didn't. So I suffered a lot with that. Like I'm feeling unappreciated, feeling unloved, feeling inadequate. All of those type of things are things, for lack of better words, that I can worship. Mm-hmm. There's a line in the 12 and 12 in chapter 6 when it's talking about defects of character, and it refers to that we really love these things. And it says this word, we exult in them.
Right.
And I've looked up the word exalt, and there's a few different deals, but, it basically means to like worship something, to really bathe yourself in it, to really get inside of it and let it be. And I have exalted in character defect behavior as simple as trying to control how my significant other spends money, simple, to me like acting out with money, me pulling into a car dealership with no need for a new car, but seeing something that oh, wow, and literally eating 10 or 15 grand to drive off in another car. And then 3 months later, getting the payments and being like, what have you done? Are you a complete idiot? And it's just all part of the same kind of emotional sickness where I create these worlds that I live in, just like I did when it seemed okay to me that I was going to the crack house. I knew it was wrong, but it seemed okay, and in sobriety, I can do those same things within my relationships with other people, within my relationship with myself, relationship with money, relationship with possessions. I can really get where I kind of worship things in such an unhealthy way. And I don't necessarily know how to detach from that. But, back to your question, because you asked me a question a long time ago. How do you get through that? How do you get through these barbed relationships that have been created by what I've been talking about? Because nobody likes to be around a person who acts like that. And the fact that I can keep that behavior arrested for long periods of time, when it pops up, nobody likes it. No one says, oh, wow, David hasn't screamed at the top of his lungs and scared the children in 6 months. So it's okay that he just did it. I mean, I'm not getting that deal. Right. And I can say, well, shoot, it's been 6 months. But the truth is, I should never scream so loud at children so they cry.
Right.
Okay? I have a whole nother story about that, but we'll save that for another time. How do I get through that? How do I get through the people who I have harmed that are having trouble letting go of it? And for me, it goes back to the instructions in the 4th step of moving from the 3rd column to the 4th column. Everyone here knows, hopefully, the first column is naming the resentment. The second column is describing what it is that happened or you continue to ruminate over. The third is how did it affect you? And then it stops and talks about we have to see these from a different perspective, a whole new angle, right? And then it says the most beautiful thing that I needed so desperately and I got from AA. It says, this was our course. First, I have to realize that I'm not the only person who feels inadequate, who feels like I have failed people, who feels like I've made mistakes in the room, that the people that I'm dealing with are human beings just like I am, and to some degree suffer from the same humanness that in other words, I need to have empathy. I need to recognize that maybe their anger or judgment about me isn't all based on me. It might be a way that they cope with their own disappointment in themselves. I don't know. I don't have to go that far to see that other people behave emotionally very similar to me when they're not doing well. In other words, it's no better for my sister to have a resentment toward me than it is for me to have a resentment towards my sister. Because when my sister has a resentment towards me, she's cutting herself from the sunlight of the Spirit, just like if I have a resentment towards her, I cut off. And I need to be able to see that and accept that, hey, I don't like their symptoms, which is the next thing, and the way they affect me, but they, like me, are perhaps spiritually sick. And when I'm willing to see that, which is very quickly now, to the unhappiness occasionally of the people close to me, because thankfully, one of the things that being sober 31 years has done is I don't sit in resentment very long. When I feel hurt by someone, I almost immediately go into seeing their sickness, their unhealth, and then praying for them, not praying for them, praying for me. I don't pray for them. That's one of the little confusions about the sick man's prayer. I pray that I may treat them as I would cheerfully treat a sick friend. I'm not praying for them to get better or for them to be happier. I'm praying for me to be able to accept them. And then the hardest part.
Okay, say that. Hold on, I want you to go over that again because
So when you say the sick man's prayer,
right,
you're actually praying for yourself. If you read the prayer, and we should bust it out, the prayer is for me, that I may.
Is that on page 60? Where is that?
65 maybe? No. It's in chapter 5. Yeah, it's about 65. It's right after the 3-column inventory.
Okay.
Wherever that is.
Go ahead.
And then the really hard part.
This is it. It says, when a person offended, we said to ourselves, this is a sick man. How can I be helpful to him? God save me from being angry. Thy will be done. Very interesting.
Yeah, the sick man's prayer is not for them, it's for me.
Yeah.
That I can have compassion and empathy. And then, of course, the big whammy when I'm pissed, how am I of service to them? How do I help them get what they are hoping to get out of this relationship? Right? It's not like when you say pray for them, pray that they get what they deserve. I mean, that's kind of the joke that we tongue in cheek say.
Yeah.
But the truth is that my prayer is that I be willing to go to them in a helpful place. Because when I become willing to do that, when I become willing to be of service, which I was of service to my sister, there's an incredible story, and I don't think she would mind me sharing, that when she's been married for 20 years, but back when I first got sober, she had been married about 4 or 5 years, and I was about 3 years sober. This is the woman who would not come to my wedding. And when I was 3 or 4 years sober, I had undergone a tremendous transformation because of the 12 steps, and her husband decided that he wanted to get divorced, and she had no idea that he wanted to get divorced. And when he announced this to her, she was stricken. Devastated. And you have my dad, who she's close to, when he was alive. My grandfather, who was still alive at the time. My mother, who she was very close to. And she picked up the phone and she called me. And she said, David, I think you're the only person who can help me. And I flew to Columbus, Ohio, and I rented a U-Haul, and we loaded up her stuff, and we drove home to Texas together, and we listened to the Joe and Charlie tapes and went through all of the steps in the Joe and Charlie tapes on the drive home, stopping the tapes and talking about resentments, talking about fears, talking about all of the stuff that the big book talks about. And anyway, I was of service to my sister. And as you can imagine, since that time, my sister and I could not be closer.
Right.
Because God put in front of me the opportunity to be of service to my sister. Now, I didn't have a lot of deep resentments towards my sister. I mean, I thought it was a little bit of a pain in the ass that she would bring up what an idiot I used to be at Thanksgiving dinner, which she did for the first couple of years. And it was true. You just don't like to be reminded, you want to go, well, that was 3 years ago, but I mean, it's still there. They're still thinking it. So then you go on, everyone thinks about the fourth column as my part, my fault, whatever you want to call it. I don't get into a big debate whether it's a fault or a part. And it is a part because right after we do the 3 columns, it openly talks about the first thing that was clear is the world and its people are often quite wrong and harm us. If AA didn't acknowledge that, I don't think I'd be here. Mm-hmm. Right? So we do acknowledge the wrongs of others, but we have to move past them. And the way I move past them is finding a way of being of service to these people. So I can tell you these guys that I'm upset with right now, not upset with them, but upset with the way they're behaving, that I'm somehow the pariah in the group, right? That I'm the person who should be shunned and everything should be a secret from me because if you tell David, it's going to cause, some cataclysm. But I can tell you, whenever they're ready, they will have all of the service that I have to offer to give them. Yeah. And because that's the way I am going to grow from this. And it's the way, hopefully, they'll stay sober. Wouldn't it be amazing, John, if all of the people that we tried to help over the past 30-something years were better? Mm-hmm. I mean, what a world it would be.
Right.
Speaking of you and helping people to be better, I want to address your step study a little because this is something that, first of all, I want people to be able to participate in it when and if they can. I know this one's already pretty much over, but you'll have another one in November again. But talk about the step study that you have done now for 20 plus years.
So I did it first at the Trinity group where I got sober. And when I moved to Frisco, no one was doing this type of thing. There were step studies going on, but they were step studies amongst people's, we didn't ever talk about this, but out in Frisco, they talk a lot about lineage.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It's okay with me.
Yeah.
I don't ever think of you as lineage. You're just John. Whatever. Maybe you're my stepdad or something. I don't know.
And just real quick, before you go into this, because there are people who are listening who may not know what a step study is.
Right. So what we do is we use the big book. It is not an AA meeting. You can come in with any need that you might have. And most of the people there, all of them this time, are recovering alcoholics, but you may not even be working the steps in terms of alcohol at all. I'm not, right? Over the years, I've done step work over all of the different coping mechanisms is the best word I can use because alcohol was a coping mechanism, right? The reason I drank in the first place and liked it is because without alcohol, I was socially inept. And with alcohol, I was socially inept, but I didn't realize it.
Yeah.
Kidding. But it lubricated my personality. It gave me the ability to jump out there and be who I wanted to be, right? And there's other coping mechanisms like that, there's, getting a spoon and a half gallon of Bluebell ice cream and not even messing with the dish. I mean, that's the way I did it with vodka, and that's the way I did it with ice cream at times. Spending and all the different things that we can do, gambling, inappropriate sexual behavior, porn, whatever it is. I mean, there's all sorts of deck chairs on that Titanic, right? And, trying to find a way to, make the steps a part of all of that, In the beginning, it's so important that I understand my powerlessness over alcohol. It's so important that I really, to my deepest possible self, recognize that I can't do this. But you know what? There's other behaviors
Mm.
that I can't do. And it's really hard. You think about food and spending. These are things that you have to do.
Right.
It's super easy not to go buy crack. I mean, it's once you're recovered.
Right.
I mean, it's pretty cut and dry. No crack, sobriety, right? But when you're talking about eating, you got to eat. And so, I mean, I bet anyone listening to this has tried to get off of sugar, right? And there's a funny thing that people do these days when they're cleaning up their eating. At least I do, but I know you guys are going to get this. They have a cheat day. Now imagine if we had a cheat day with crack. And it works out just about the same. If I'm trying not to eat sugar and I have a cheat day and I run up to Brahms and get a banana split, the next day at about the same time,
Right.
I'm getting a little tired. I just could use a little pick-me-up. And the next thing you know, I'm getting some Oreos out of the cabinet that are really for the boys, right? And I'm in full relapse. Within a week, it's like, oh yeah, I was going to get off sugar, but I forgot about it. So in other words, trying to bring, I guess, the power, the way of life to all of these coping mechanisms, And so we have a lot of people there. We do not get into the deep specifics of anyone's stuff. That's not what's happening there. That's done outside the meeting in our homework. What we do is we come into the meeting and the homework is based on the big book. When we read the doctor's opinion, we share about and then write about our abnormal reactions. When we read Bill's story, we talk about our descent into the behavior. We kind of leave out the last half of the chapter because we're going to get to that, right? And then you go to chapter 2 and it talks more about this way we react to alcohol, in a way that it doesn't work for us, right? We start drinking, we can't stop. I start doing inappropriate behavior X and I can't stop. It just turns in and I always end up at the same place going, how did I get here, right? And then you go into chapter 3 and it pivots a little bit by talking about even when I quit, my brain will tell me that I can get away with it one more time. Or even if I can't get away with it, here's the thing for me. People say that insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. And that is true. But for me, insanity is doing the same thing over and over, knowing exactly what's going to happen and still doing it anyway. Right? And so I did that in other areas of my life besides drinking. And that's what we try to focus in. And then when you get into like chapter 4 and you're really in step 2, it's kind of like talking about our prejudices about God. And, it's interesting because you and I touched a little bit on politics, these prejudices are not just about God, right? I have a lot of prejudices. I have prejudices about basically everything. And my ability to be humble and not have these prejudices direct me in every way, in every area of my life. Like every single day when I walk into every single conversation, every single AA meeting or anything that I'm doing, if I have things that have me locked down from having a new experience, then my prejudices are interfering with my life. If I have such a belief that if you voted this way and I voted this way, that there's no way that we can come to common ground, and that's the way I feel before every conversation that I have, then I have a prejudice that disallows me to have good relationships with people, disallows me from having good relationships with the world, because I don't care where you are, what time, what place in history, what country, there has always been deep divisions about political belief systems. There have always been deep divisions about religions. It's not some new thing fresh for 2025 that we all of a sudden are arguing about religion and politics,
No, it's
right?
not.
I mean, when the big book was written, the McCarthy era hadn't happened. JFK hadn't been assassinated. Right? These big giant things that have happened in history are just continuing to happen. And my prejudices are that this is new, this is the end of mankind, this has to change, I can't talk to people who would support that. If I'm living my life like that, I am shutting myself off for my relationships, and in the end, I'm creating resentments that shut me off from the sunlight of the Spirit.
I want to read you a quote that I got. I don't know if you know him or not, Bill C., but he sends out a daily meditation. And I've saved this one in my inbox because I thought it was actually real good, and it dovetails right into what you were just talking about. It's from C.S. Lewis, and he says, a great many of those who debunk traditional values have in the background values of their own, which they believe to be immune from the debunking process.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, I can have this attitude many times of my views cannot be debunked,
Right.
but I can find all ways to debunk your views.
Yes.
And it is a challenge, and that happens in AA. That happens in political beliefs.
Right.
It happens at work. It can happen in so many different arenas. And to have that open mind really means a lot. All right. So, David, we have covered so much ground. We covered, I think, everything that I wanted to cover. Is there anything that you want to share before we kind of wrap this up about, I don't know, give any sort of experience, strength, and hope? As you know, you have a lot of people listening to you out there. Is there anything that comes to mind for you?
Yeah, I think it's time for me, as we move into 2025, and it'll be I'm in my 32nd year of sobriety, and just trying to be a little bit more compassionate, to be able to forgive the unforgivable, to tolerate the intolerable, to offer grace instead of judgment, and really to be of service. That sounds, at Jesuit, where I went to high school, they used to talk about, and they still do, I know, one of their themes is being a man for others. And, when I was in high school and tripping X every weekend, I really didn't have any way to attach. I bet there were guys there who were way more emotionally healthy than me that really understood and have lived a long time in this place of being a man for others. But I know for me, as I've stayed sober longer and longer, and particularly in times where things are a little unsure, we don't really know a lot of things about the world, what's happening in Israel, in the Middle East, and in Eastern Europe and Russia. We could go on and on. Any day of any year, we could go on. But obviously, there's more going on right now. I mean, I'm not even bringing up the UFOs. I don't know what to think about that. But anyway, that sounds crazy. But whatever. It's these things that are on the horizon, and this idea in AA that we call being of service, and in Jesuit they called being a man for others, is in my meditations and in my prayer life and in my AA work and in my family life and my friendships and the businesses that I operate. I've really discovered and want to strengthen and participate more in being a man for others, to have grace for the people that I would judge, to have forgiveness for the people who I feel don't deserve forgiveness, just to lose that attitude that somehow my idea is the idea. And I'm going to finish with this. There's this dude on TikTok, and I'm sure he's other places, but that's the social media I look at. And he's an atheist, and he talks about religion, and he's not impolite. He just has his beliefs, and he's not nasty about other people's beliefs. And I know that most of you have probably heard this, but it really has reverberated in so many places, in particular, what you just shared when you were asking me this question. It's when it came into my head. And he said, there's roughly 3,000 religions in the world, and you don't believe in 2,999 of them. And I don't believe in one more. Okay. And I'm not an atheist, but it really is true. This idea that someone has to be right and someone has to be wrong. I don't want that to be such a big part of my life.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. Well said. I love that. David, as always, I call it you bring the heat. Gosh, I just love spending time with you. Unfortunately, we should just spend more time just like talking off mic. I mean, I know we talk on the phone, and I know we see each other in meetings, but I always just get so much out of, when I saw you, there was one night that I saw you recently at the Shivering Denizens meeting. And we just, I don't know, we just talked about what was going on, and it just meant, I can't tell you, you got a little teary. I don't know. Yeah. And I've thought about that moment for, many, many times between just now when we're getting together. And, I just love you to death. I think you're a wonderful man. And once again, you've done so much for AA. So much for the 12 steps, even NA and CA, just all across the community and throughout the world. And I know you're doing some speaking engagements now and too, and I absolutely love that. So, in fact, if anybody wants David's information, they could just write me. I'm at John, JOHN, at soberspeak.com, and we'll get you in touch with David. And so anyway, thanks again. I'm going to read from
John, I love you too.
I love you, man. You're a good man.
Yep.
You're a good man. I'm going to read from page 164 of the Big Book. It says, abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to Him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us, like me and David G., as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. Once again, thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
Once again, Mr. David G., thank you so much for coming in and sharing your experience, strength, and hope with the listeners. I know they're going to enjoy that. If you want to reach out to me with comments regarding David or any of the other speakers, or you just want to say, hey, you can write me at John, JOHN, at soberspeak.com. And remember, we do not want you sharing your toothbrush, but we would absolutely love for you to pause your device and share that episode with a friend or family member. It may be just what they need today. And if you are interested in joining our super secret Facebook group, go to your Facebook application, look up Sober Speak Secret Group, ask for admission into the group, and we will get you on in there. We would love to have you as part of that group. I think we have, 3,000? Is it 3,000? Yeah, 3,000, 3,500, 3,200 other people in there. And we would love for you to be part of it as well if you are not already in there. And if you're not following us on Instagram, it's at Sober Speak, all one word. Come on in there and follow us as well. Now on to a little bit of listener feedback. Lisa writes in and she says, hi, John, how are you? I'm good, Lisa. Thank you very much. She says, I keep discovering golden gems on your podcast, such as Jimmy D. I have listened to all the podcasts with him. Is it possible to get in touch with him? Thank you for your service in providing such great sober conversations. Lisa from a country corner in Sweden. She is from Sweden. Well, Lisa, as you know, I replied, got you in touch with Mr. Jimmy D, and I'll let you take it from there. But thank you so much for writing in. I appreciate it. And Jimmy D is a gem on this podcast. And just in case you're curious about which episode she's talking, well, there's many episodes she has on here, but I think the latest one is episode number 378. It's called Jimmy D Make Things Better. And then Maria writes in, our friend Maria. She says, greetings from North Carolina. Maria has been on the podcast in the past and did an absolutely fantastic bang-up job. She says, hello there, old friend. Well, hello, Maria. She says, I hope you are doing well. I miss you and your silliness so very much. She says, believe it or not, I just celebrated 11 years on Saturday. Wow. Time flies. I knew her right when she came in. She says, with that,
I shared my story on an online platform, and I had so many women reach out. My heart breaks for those who are still sick and suffering inside and outside the rooms. My soberversary and God, that's a made up word, right? I mean, that can't be it can't be in the dictionary. We have a lot of made up words. Like sponsee. I don't think that's one you can actually find in the dictionary, but I could be wrong. But anyway, she says, my soberversary and God always give me this beautiful moment in time to reflect on what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. And I thought of you and what a gift you had always been since day one of our meeting. SoberSpeak gave me an opportunity to listen to my own story and be reminded of the incredible miracle that took place on January 18th, 2014, and just how blessed I am. With a little more time under my belt, tons more wisdom and understanding of the program, and a deep relationship with my higher power, life is really happy, joyous, and free. Not perfect. There are and there are times when I am still scratching my head and questioning God, but He never fails to reveal His plans on His time and when I need them. I'm so eternally grateful and wanted you to be reminded of what an important part of my journey your friendship has been to me. Yep. And yes, I'm still sparkly. She says it, sparkly and sober. Maria. Oh, and you can, if you want to follow Maria on Instagram, you can as well. It's at My Sober Blessings on Instagram and at Sober Blessings on Facebook. You can follow Sparkly Maria out there. Maria, give my best to your husband. I'm not going to say his name here just because I don't know if he wants it to be said or not. And also to your family. I think you moved out there to be with family, and I know you're her and your other two kids as well. So anyway, give my best to them. All right, everybody. That right there is another episode of Sober Speak in the books. Keep coming back. It works if you work it. The program, that is, not Sober Speak per se. What's the other thing I do? Oh, I plan on being back here next week, but you never know. I take this thing 1 week at a time. And may God bless you and keep you until then. Bye-bye, y'all.